The Starslayer Saga, The Edge of Space, by Xander Oswald. Chapter 1. May 21st, 2537. Astro Era. Jurisdiction, Corporate Front. Planet, Nemesis. Cade could not tell if the heat of the desert expanse were, once again, playing tricks on his mind. It would not be the first time an oasis, a watering hole, or a sign of civilization materialized out of nowhere only to disappear as he approached. Cade advanced toward what looked like a town, slowly, each footstep seemingly heavier than the last. His backpack, revolver, and cartridge belts, one wrapped around his chest, the other around his waist, felt heavier than ever. His brown cloth poncho was flipped across his shoulder, and the black gloves, causing his hands to sweat profusely, did not help matters. As he approached, his heart beat faster. He was able to see the wooden sign held up by two wooden posts. The sign read, Tombstone. No mirage has been as detailed as this one. Could it be real? Cade hastened his steps as a flood of hope rejuvenated his strength. He could already taste the cool water drenching his parched throat and feel the cool shade against his burnt skin. Cade had unfortunately underestimated the trek. Though it was not the first time, this time around it almost killed him. As he hastened his steps, the small bag tied to the cartridge belt on his waist bounced against his upper left thigh. It was his scrap bag, and it felt worryingly light. He would have to spend his scrap wisely. As Cade approached, he could see a few gunslingers standing under the sign talking amongst themselves. They were each equipped with a pistol buckled to their holsters with rifles slung over their shoulders. Their outfits were identical. 10-gallon hats, bandanas around their necks, the typical Western collared shirt and jeans, and boots with spurs attached. Just by looking at them, Cade could tell they were not going to be the friendliest folks around, so he adjusted his poncho, flipping it back over his torso, covering the cartridge belt, revolver, and the bag of scraps. As he proceeded, the three gunslingers glanced in his direction and flashed mischievous smiles simultaneously. Here we go. The tallest of the men drew his pistol. This here town is under new management. Cade knew exactly what that meant. The sheriff and the deputies at Tombstone were gunned down. New sheriff in Tombstone is mugshot, the tallest man continued. So hand over any scrap you have in order to enter this here town. You ain't likely to get hurt. Look, fellas, Cade said, as you can see, I just came here from the astro-forsaken desert, and I reckoned that I would have a bite to eat with a drink. I don't have much scrap. Bang. Cade was interrupted by the cackle of the gunslinger's weapon as he quickly unholstered it and let loose a round in the air. He stepped up to Cade, his nose only a couple inches from Cade's. The smell of mint chewing tobacco filled Cade's nostrils. I didn't ask for an explanation. If you want to enter this here town, you'll have to give me your scrap. We are the law around here now. Cade's first instinct was to use his nanite-enhanced strength to break the gunslinger's face with a headbutt. After this, he would enhance his speed, activate his energy blade, and then use it to stab and rapidly vaporize the liquid inside their bodies, causing their bodies to explode in a pile of guts and coagulated blood. He could do all this before they could even register what was happening to them. Even with their hands on their revolvers, they would not have the time to get their weapons out before they would be an unrecognizable mess mixed in with the dirt on the ground. The nanites within Cade's body absorbed energy from the surrounding environment and converted it into energy the body could use to enhance certain attributes. Speed, his 5 senses, or strength. He could dedicate all the nanites to one attribute, or he could dedicate a group, known as a network, of nanites to multiple attributes at once. Cade only had 3 networks of general-type nanites to work with. When the nanites were completely depleted of energy, they would require 5 minutes to absorb more energy and convert it into something the body could use. Cade also had a network of specialized nanites that only focused on keeping Cade healed, which in turn gave Cade an accelerated healing factor. The gloves that Cade had on, too, used the same energy conversion technology. They could be used to produce either an energy blade or a shield wall to block incoming bullets or other projectiles and explosions. While the NES, Nano-Enhanced System, was neurally linked to Cade's brain, his gloves worked on movements by his hands. Once certain movements were achieved, the green lines on his gloves, which traveled down each finger, would illuminate and create the energy shield or blade. If Cade wanted, he could easily dispatch all 3 gunslingers in about 5 seconds. Cade was careful to reach inside his poncho and pull the scrap bag from the cartridge belt on his waist. He slowly handed it over to the gunslinger. The gunslinger snorted and laughed, snatched the bag from his hands, and started back toward his compadres while shuffling his fingers through it. The tallest of the three pulled the strings and tightened the mouth of the bag and then peered at Cade with a smirk. "You're a little low on scrap," the gunslinger said. "What's in the backpack?" "It is just a bunch of junk that wouldn't interest you fellas." "Then why are you carrying it? Toss it over." "Fellas," Cade said, "how do you reckon I'm supposed to eat and find shelter if—" "It ain't our problem. Now, get while the getting is good and toss it." Cade shook his head, tossed the bag over, and it landed on the ground in front of them. The gunslinger picked it up, and the three went through it. They relieved him of his rain slickers, water canteen, and knife. The tallest of the three then tossed the now nearly empty backpack over to Cade. It landed near his feet. Cade retrieved it. "You're free to enter," the tallest gunslinger said. "No hard feelings, huh?" "No hard feelings," Cade said. He began walking past the gunslingers. They chuckled behind his back. Cade's blood boiled, but he remained composed. He still had some blankets in the bag that he could sell for some scrap, and if it came down to it and he got desperate, he could even sell his ammunition and his revolver, which he had named Pal. Cade surveyed the town. Tombstone was like any other backwater town on planet Nemesis. Most of the buildings were made of plywood, and there was one story. Dirt was all that passed for roads, and he would not be surprised if the main mode of transportation were horses and stagecoaches. The town looked abandoned. A lonely tumbleweed rolling across the howling wind was its only sign of activity. He bolted toward the building with a crude-looking sign nailed over the awning that read Jenkins General. It was probable that he would be able to barter for some water. There were merchants who were more than willing to do so, though it was not the preferred method. Scrap was the most preferred way to do business. Cade traversed a couple of steps onto the platform under the awning. The door of the establishment was wide open. It was probably open to help keep the place cool in the blistering heat, but seeing how it looked like it was kicked off its hinges, he doubted it. The clerk behind the counter squinted as Cade walked in. He moved his right hand from the register and slowly lowered it behind the counter to grab something. Behind the clerk, the counter was disheveled. It appeared someone had come in, taken what they wanted, and departed in a hurry. "Look, the last guy who was here already cleared me out," the clerk said. "I ain't got no more valuables to give to your boss." "Whoa," Cade said with his hands up, trying to seem as non-threatening as possible. "I'm only here to trade. I am not with the crew out there," Cade explained while nodding his head in the direction of the three gunslingers who shook him down just moments ago. "Sorry about that," the clerk said. He breathed a sigh of relief and brought his hand back up near the register. "I only take scraps here." "But you didn't even look at the merchandise," Cade said as he took off his backpack. "Sorry, fella," the clerk said. "I've been had too many times by space junk. I ain't itching to keep making the same mistake." "So, there is no chance of me getting water at least?" Cade asked as he pinched the bridge of his nose with his index finger and thumb. "Not without some scrap." Cade thought about his revolver and ammunition. "What about weapons and ammunition? Are you willing to trade for that?" "Nope. Sorry, sir. Just scrap." Cade sighed. He did a 180 and started for the exit. Still thirsty and hungry, he had to come up with a way to make a few scrap. The local saloon usually had a few rowdy fellas willing to buy firearms and rounds for the right amount of scraps. Cade's seemingly haphazard train of thought was derailed when he heard commotion around the corner of the store. His heart began to beat as he placed his hand on the handle of Pal. He bolted around the corner of the store, and upon turning the corner, he could see a female pleading with a few more gunslinger types as they loaded crates on a stagecoach. Cade slowed and approached. "Please, that is all the medicine that we have until the next shipment," the brunette woman pleaded. "Many of the townsfolk here are affected with tyad. Without the medication, many of them will die." The men ignored her pleading and finished loading 2 more crates into the back of the stagecoach. Cade could see the stagecoach was full of various items. It appeared they had cleaned this town out well. There was another man sitting on the seat of the buggy right behind the horses. He had a handlebar mustache and looked on at the woman's pleading, smiling ear to ear. That must be the new sheriff. Mugshot. "Well, if the medication is that important to you," the mugshot interrupted, "then there must be something of equal value you'd be willing to trade for it." The woman, whom Cade now assumed was the town doctor, became silent and looked down at the ground in defeat. Mugshot laughed and stood up. He was a large man, around 6'7". He wore a white, short-sleeved shirt, which exposed his massive arms, black bow tie, and a pair of black pants. He had on a bandolier and 2 pistols holstered on both sides of his hip. There were other bandits around the stagecoach. Cade figured it would take the bandits at the front a minute to get there if there were to be any commotion that were out of the ordinary, like a series of gunshots. Out of nowhere, a kid who could not have been more than 10 years old ran up and chucked a small rock as hard as he could at Mugshot. The rock smashed into the jaw and drew blood from a small cut it made. Mugshot howled and held his face in pain as two of the bandits grabbed the small boy by the arm and held him there. The boy struggled to break free, but it was no use. Cade could feel the heat rise in his face as his anger ignited. The bandits contorted the boy's arm, pulling it hard behind his back. The boy screamed in pain. He would not be able to stay out of the situation if it continued to decline, which it obviously would. Mugshot recovered from the thrown rock, removing his hand from his face and looking at the blood in his palm. His face became red. "You stupid fraggin' glitch," Mugshot seethed through his teeth. "You must be brain-zerked if you think that you'll get away with this. Hold him there! I'm fixin' to teach some manners." Mugshot reached down to his right pistol and pulled it from the holster attached at his thigh. This is it. It was always important to avoid confrontations when possible because confrontations could become too costly. However, he had no choice in this matter. "Hey, fellas," Cade yelled, getting the attention of Mugshot and the three bandits, the woman and the kid. "Perhaps we ought to let the kid go. He did something stupid, but I don't think that should be any reason to kill him." "Who the hell are you?" Mugshot shouted. "I'm new in town," Cade said. He flipped his poncho over his shoulder and pulled out his revolver pal, keeping the barrel pointed towards himself. "If you let the kid go, you can have this amazing 10-round voice-activated revolver with smart bullets and all of my rounds. I will neither protest nor make a sound." At the mention of the word sound, the cylinder of the revolver spun on its own and then suddenly stopped. A green light illuminated the cylinder and barrel of the weapon, indicating a sound round was next to fire. "This is worth way more than a kid's life, right?" "Perhaps," Mugshot smirked as he pointed his pistol at the kid. "But why choose just one when I can take both? I kill the kid, then I take your weapon, and if you resist, I'll kill your sorry ass too." Cade's brows furrowed. "I'm warning you. I can no longer in good conscience stay out of this. I'm asking you to please spare the boy's life and put back the medicine you stole and leave town. You can keep everything else you stole. Just let the boy live and leave the medicine here. People's lives are at stake." Mugshot, still standing on the stagecoach, laughed. "Ha! What kind of massive peacenik are you? I'm the one making demands. I'm in control of this situation, not you. Do you think you can tell us what to do?" "I thought it was a good compromise. You can still make off like a bandit, and no one in this town must die." "Please, sir," Cade continued. "Going down this route could hurt someone." "Good," Mugshot said as he started to squeeze the trigger. Cade quickly flipped Pal's barrel toward Mugshot with lightning speed and pulled the trigger, causing the hammer to pull back and then shoot forward, ejecting the bullet in an explosion out of the barrel. The bullet shot forth and exploded in front of Mugshot, causing a disorienting sound wave to hit him. Startled, Mugshot dropped his pistol and covered his ears in pain. As expected, the two bandits holding the boy let go and drew their pistols. The third bandit near the horse in front of the stagecoach drew his as well. The boy ran for a nearby building. "Let's get to it." Cade swung his left hand downward, causing a green, translucent shield wall to shoot forth from the green lines in his gloves. It looked like a hologram shield with transparent hexagonal panels. It was twice as tall as Cade and 3 times as wide, giving him great cover. The bandits then proceeded to open fire. It took a hexagonal panel 3 direct hits with their bullets to disappear, which gave Cade plenty of time to let off his next shot before having to find cover other than his shield. While the bandits' bullets could not penetrate the shield, Cade's bullets from the inside of the shield had no issue passing through it. The bandits' bullets flared up against his shield in a bright green. "Sting round!" Cade yelled. The cylinder spun and stopped, and the cylinder and barrel of Pal illuminated red. Cade pulled the trigger. A bullet escaped from the barrel, passed through the energy barrier without destroying a panel, and exploded amongst Mugshot and the 2 bandits near him. As Mugshot was slowly recovering from the disorienting effect of the sound blast, a blast of a burning pepper concoction hit his eyes, nose, and throat, effectively blinding him and making it hard to breathe without coughing and gagging. Mugshot and the 2 bandits near him were incapacitated. Cade then focused his attention on the third one, who was still firing. A bullet zipped by his head as half of the hexagonal panels protecting him were gone. "Sound round," Cade yelled as he dedicated a network of nanites to his speed and, with near superhuman speed, he moved to the same side of the stagecoach as the bandits and pulled the trigger. The bullet exploded and the bandit dropped his pistol to cover his ears. He squinted his eyes so hard that tears resulted. With his near-superhuman speed still in effect, Cade ran to the disoriented bandit, kicked the back of his right leg to send him to his knees, yanked the gun from his hand, and before the bandit knew it, his hands were zip-tied behind his back with zip-tie cuffs. Mugshot, still wiping the snot and tears away from his face with one hand, jumped off the stagecoach with his weapons drawn, almost losing his balance and falling to the ground once he landed. Cade hesitated for a split second. Eyes widened. Usually, it took around 5 minutes to regain normal functioning after being hit by the pepper explosion. This guy was tough. Cade did not like using each group of nanites in succession. With only 3 at his disposal, if he can avoid using them, he will. He had no idea when he would need them, and with a 5-minute recharge period, using them all at the wrong time could be costly. Mugshot wiped the tears from his bloodshot eyes and then aimed his pistol at Cade. "Smoke round," Cade yelled. Pal's cylinders once again spun and stopped, and a white light proceeded from the cylinders and barrel. Cade quickly aimed and shot to the ground between the two. A cloud of smoke suddenly materialized. Bang, bang, bang! Cade heard the zip of the bullets as they flew by his head. After a couple of seconds, Cade moved around Mugshot as Mugshot slowly made his way through the cloud of smoke. Cade watched the faint outline of the bandits closely. Once directly behind him, Cade snuck up and dedicated a group of nanites to his strength. Cade kicked the back of Mugshot's right leg, causing him to fall on one knee. He then grabbed his arm and started to bend his elbow back behind his head. Mugshot yelled. This allowed him to rip the pistol from his hand and, with his enhanced strength, zip-tie his hands behind his back. With Mugshot tamed and the smoke cleared, Cade could see the first 2 bandits recovering from their dose of pepper concoction. He bolted in their direction. Pal trained on them. "Put down your guns or I'll put you both down," Cade warned. The bandits complied. The doctor then charged out of her clinic with a shotgun aimed at both while she stood on the raised platform of the clinic below the awning. She cocked it. "Whoa now," Cade said. "They're both under control. Just make sure they don't move. 3 more are coming." Cade walked over to Mugshot and the bandits on the other side of the stagecoach and quickly pulled them over to the other side with the rest of them. They complied, not wanting to tempt fate with the doctor and her shotgun. Her finger was already squeezing the trigger. "Sting round." The cylinder of his revolver spun as Cade walked towards the corner the 3 other bandits would be rounding, and, as he expected, they rounded the corner only to be met by an explosive round of pepper spray. They were immediately incapacitated. He used his last group of nanites and applied them to his speed. He quickly disarmed the men and used the last 3 zip ties to tie up their hands. Cade then held them at gunpoint. "Start walking or else." They complied. They walked over to the stagecoach while gagging and coughing. Their eyes were red, tears running down their cheeks. Cade and the brunette woman made eye contact. Cade nodded in her direction, and she returned the gesture. Suddenly, Mugshot broke free from his zip ties, grabbed a shotgun, and jerked it to such force it sent the doctor flying off the platform and onto the ground. Mugshot quickly aimed the shotgun in Cade's direction. "Adhesive!" Cade yelled. The cylinder spun, stopped, and Pal illuminated yellow. Nearly at the same time that Cade pulled the trigger, Mugshot fired. The adhesive round exploded, a sticky, yellow substance around Mugshot's hand and the trigger, preventing him from pulling the trigger again. "What the hell is this stuff?" Mugshot yelled as he made the mistake of moving his left hand from the guard at the gun to the adhesive, now ensuring both hands were stuck to the yellow substance. "Get this fragging waste off of me!" "Fat chance," Cade said as he nonchalantly walked over to him. Defeated, Mugshot allowed Cade to guide him over to the stagecoach where he stuck the adhesive his hands and shotgun were covered in onto the stagecoach, keeping him there. Cade did not like using the adhesive on an aggressor and his weapon because it effectively kept them glued to their weapon, but Cade had no choice in the matter. He had used both sound and sting rounds, and using a smoke round again was too risky as Mugshot would fire wildly in different directions. "Little help over here," one of the bandits yelled. "Tony, he's shot!" Cade turned around to see the tallest of the bandits, who shook him down, lying on the ground. Damn it. The force of the adhesive round had sent Mugshot's shotgun in that bandit's direction the moment he pulled the trigger. The doctor got back to her feet and began to brush the dirt off her pants. "Go help the bandit over there," Cade said. "I'll watch them." "Help him?" the doctor asked, crossing her arms. "Your Hippocratic oath is to do no harm, right? Don't be like them." "Frag," the doctor said. She bolted over to the wounded bandit and inspected the wound. "Companion, I need help getting him inside." Cade looked up at the clinic as he heard heavy footsteps rushing toward the front. The front door swung open, revealing a 6-foot-tall machina. It was mostly metallic gray aside from the right arm and right leg, which were black, obviously not the original parts. On its chest, Cade could see the red letters, Model 911S2. It was a very outdated medical companion Machina model, only good for carrying heavy equipment and emptying bedpans. Its arms and legs were long, and its face had small, beady eyes and no mouth. The Machina walked down the few steps of the porch under the awning and approached the wounded bandit. The companion bent down and, with no effort at all, picked up the wounded bandit who grimaced in pain. The doctor went ahead of the companion and opened the door. The two disappeared inside the clinic. Cade brought the other two bandits over to where the rest of his gang were. He kept his weapons trained on the bandits who eyed him with contempt. "You all should be grateful. I could have just killed you," Cade said. He hoped the other bandit was all right. He meant to fire off the adhesive and prevent Mugshot from shooting anyone. After a couple of minutes, the doctor appeared in the doorway, with blood on her shirt. She shook her head. "Heh," Mugshot said. "Oh well." Cade suddenly wanted to smack Mugshot upside the head. "He was your compadre, and this is all you can say?" "Compadre," Mugshot said. "He was nothing to me but a random guy I committed crimes with." Cade rolled his eyes and then looked at the doctor. "What should we do with these guys?" "A sheriff from a nearby town should be arriving soon," the doctor answered. "I had my companion in there call him. He can't get here soon enough." A few minutes later, 3 men on horseback armed with shotguns could be seen approaching the edge of town, their horses rhythmically kicking up a cloud of dirt behind them. "Speak of the vac," Cade said. When they arrived, they dismounted from their horses. Cade could see the gold and silver stars on their sleeveless jackets over their collared shirts. They wore jeans and boots with spurs in them. One of the deputies, with silver stars, started cutting the zip ties and replacing them with laser cuffs, while the other one kept a rifle trained on them. The laser cuffs were 2 metal half-circle devices that completed the circle with an unbreakable blue light. The 2 circles were connected by a steel link in the middle. The third guy with the gold badge that read Sheriff approached, squinting in Cade's direction. "Are you the bounty hunter who apprehended these criminals? What is your bounty ID or alias?" "I don't have a bounty ID," Cade said. "I was just passing through and saw that I needed to step in." "Not a bounty hunter, you say? Then why didn't you kill these vermin? You must be a bounty hunter itching for a full reward to apprehend these killers alive." "Well, I'm not a bounty hunter," Cade said. He did not much like being compared to those whom he perceived reduced a human's worth to a number of scrap they could get for apprehending them. Still squinting, he glanced at everyone, and after a few seconds of silence, the sheriff gave up trying to figure him out. "All right, well, each member of the Mugshot gang is worth 500 scrap, while Mugshot himself is worth 1,000. So that is 4,000 scrap," the sheriff said as he removed his wallet from his pocket and proceeded to give him a bundle of scraps. Cade took the money. He started over to where the doctor was standing in front of the clinic doors, observing the scenes from beneath the awning. Cade walked over to her while counting the money. 2,000 scraps for you," Cade said as he split the wad of scraps in two. "No, you did most of the work," the doctor said. "Well, if you weren't there with your shotgun keeping them still, all my efforts would have probably been wasted." The doctor hesitated, but ended up taking the money and placing it in her pocket. "What is your name, anyhow?" Cade asked. "Beverly. And yours?" She stuck out her hand. "Cade," he said as he shook her hand. "I am surprised you didn't kill them. You certainly could have. Who are you, anyway, to be able to fight like that?" "I'm just a guy trying to do right by everyone he encounters," Cade said. "Say, would you know where I could get something to eat or drink around here? I'm famished." "Yes, the saloon is right down the street." "Thank you, Miss Beverly." "Ew, what is this?" the deputy exclaimed. Cade looked in that direction to see the deputy inspecting the adhesive around Mugshot and his weapon. Cade chuckled. "Let me help you with that." Cade pushed his way through the bat-winged doors of the saloon. The man at the piano, who was wearing a black suit and a top hat, stopped playing and looked over in Cade's direction for a second. Cade looked around the bar and could see several sets of eyes on him. He started for the bar and the upbeat music started up again. Cade sat down on a stool in front of the bar. He observed the activity occurring in the bar. 3 men were sitting around at the table, smoking their cigars and playing a game of cards, while there were 2 others sitting at the bar being served by the bartender. The 2 at the bar were facing away from the bartender, watching a small hologram in the middle of the room of the jetball game being played in what looked like the Olympus Stadium. 2 men in jetpacks collided with one another as the man attempted to collide with the ball carrier. Jetball was the most popular sport in Pantheon. Seeing the Olympus Stadium brought back feelings of home for Cade. It had been over a year since he had stepped foot on a planet within the Federation's jurisdiction. He missed his home. The bartender approached. "I would like a moon juice, please," Cade said, "and whatever fruits and vegetables you're serving for sides." "No meat?" the bartender asked. "Yes, no meat." The bartender walked over to the wall behind the counter where there were a dozen different faucets up against the wall of different colors. He grabbed a glass, walked over to the green one, put the glass under it, and pulled down on the faucet handle, causing a green liquid to fill the cup to the brim, leaving a light green foam on top. He then placed it on the counter and slid it over to Cade, who caught it. Cade took a drink of the bitter-tasting nectar and savored the bitter taste. It was heaven. After a few minutes, a man in his early 50s sat down next to him. He wore a green-colored shirt and a tie hanging down to the middle of his stomach. "I saw your fight, mister," the man said. "Oh, yeah?" "Yeah. Name's Buster." "Cade." "You should really consider being a bounty hunter. It's honest work and you seem cut out for it." "One day of someone trying to kill me is good enough for me. I don't like to be looking for trouble." "That may be the case, but with your talents, it would be perfect for you. You like to help people. You can be a bounty hunter and help keep scum like that off the streets." Cade took a drink of his intoxicating green liquid as he considered Buster's words. It seemed like a fairly attractive pitch. It would offer him more lives to save and probably contribute better to atoning for his past instead of nomadically looking for people to help. But it was risky. There were other considerations. What if he relapsed into his old patterns of senseless murder? His victims from his previous life flashed through his mind. A woman shielding her children from the fate that would befall them after he impaled her with his blade. Not interested. Cade drank the rest of his drink in several large gulps and slammed the cup on the table. He was no longer hungry. Cade reached into his pocket and placed a scrap of bills on the table. "Keep the change." "What about your food?" the bartender reminded him. "Give it to this kind fella." Cade placed his hand on Buster's shoulder. Cade started for the doors. "If you ever go to Desperado City to join a crew," Buster said, "put down Domino as a reference. I know of a crew that would pick up on that and hire you in a split. Mighty fine crew, that one."